Hey there, I'm Patti Ogilvie with the Student Loan Help Group, and I'm a senior enrollment counselor here.
And I'm Sam Pettingill with the Student Loan Help Group. I'm also a senior enrollment counselor.
So today we're going to talk about some of the changes that are occurring this year with your student loans, as well as learn about the one-time account adjustment changes. And then we'll go over some of the benefits and what you can expect moving forward. Because there are a lot of changes and we want to make sure that everybody's up on everything. And so you definitely got an expert here. Sam knows everything about these programs. So let's just start out, Sam. What is the one-time account revision for eligible income-driven repayment borrowers?
So it's kind of a mouthful of a name. They've been calling it the income-driven repayment account adjustment, or the one-time account adjustment. Back in April of last year, the Department of Education first announced that they were going to be doing this program. And really what it's intended to address is there's been some really long-standing inequities about the way that certain things have been handled with the student loan forgiveness process. Like, for example, if you had the wrong loan type, or if you were steered into forbearance by your servicer, you might not qualify for forgiveness, even though you technically have met all of the requirements in terms of you've had a long time in public service or you've been in repayment for longer than was required for forgiveness. So really what this program is designed to do is to address those problems and to fix the issues with payment tracking for two programs. So income-driven repayment forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. Now, there's a number of things that they'll be doing in order to make that happen. First of all, income-driven repayment forgiveness, just as a recap, that's the program where if you're not working toward, for example, public service, anyone with a student loan balance is eligible as long as they are on an income-driven repayment plan. You have to be on that income-driven payment plan for either 240 or 300 months. That would be 20 or 25 years, depending on the type of loans that you have and the type of payment plan you've been on. At the end of that time, the Department of Education forgives the entire remaining balance, principal and interest. The other program that is affected is public service loan forgiveness. If you're making 120 qualifying payments, which would be payments on an income-driven payment plan while you have direct loans, and you're working at least 30 hours a week for a public service employer, at the end of those 120 qualifying payments, again, your entire remaining balance is forgiven, principal and interest. So they're very similar programs, but PSLF has about half of the time for that to take place because it only requires 10 years of qualifying payments, not 20. So both of those programs will be impacted by this one-time account adjustment. The Department of Education is going to go back and provide credit for both programs for payments that normally would not have been able to receive that credit. So with either program, if you weren't set up correctly back in the beginning, let's say you made payments in 2015, but you had the wrong loan type, they weren't eligible loans, you wouldn't be able to go back, and there's no way under the normal rules to redeem that payment and get credit for that payment. The one-time account adjustment is taking care of that for you as long as you're set up correctly by the end of this year. So if you're set up correctly by the end of December, when this program is set to end, then the Department of Education is going to go back and give you credit for prior payments that normally would not have counted, either because you were with the wrong loan type or on the wrong repayment plan, or maybe you just had a consolidation between then and now that normally would have reset your progress. Maybe you had an extended amount of time in forbearance. And there's a whole host of bullet points really that the Department of Education has put out to say, these are the circumstances where we will give you credit now, and we would not have given you credit before. I'd be happy to go over those, or Patti, if you would like to kind of go over how the one-time account adjustment changes will impact borrowers.
Sure, I can do that. Sure. So as far as the one-time account adjustment, so there are a couple different loan types. Mainly the ones that people are familiar with are the direct loans, but some people have what's called FFEL loans. That stands for Federal Family Education Loans, or you may have Perkins loans. And with the one-time account adjustment, typically without that adjustment, what has to happen is somebody has to get set up correctly and have direct loans before they're eligible for one of the forgiveness programs. Now, with this account adjustment, the DOE is going to allow people to get set up correctly and turn their FFEL loans or Perkins loans into direct loans. And that would be done with a consolidation. And now they have eligible loans towards one of the forgiveness programs. Now, the great news about the one-time account adjustment is that the DOE, once the borrower is set up correctly, they're going to go in and they're going to allow any time in repayment, for example, for public service loan forgiveness, any time in repayment from October 1st, 2007 till present while working for an eligible employer. And that's any state, county, local, federal government employer or nonprofit, regardless of your position. So they're going to count any payments that you made, partial payment, late payment, or no payment. If you're in repayment, the DOE is going to count it toward the 120 needed, which is incredible because without this one-time adjustment, you'd still be eligible for the program and you'd have to get set up correctly, but you would be starting over at payment number 1 of the 120. So this has been life-changing for many of the people that we deal with. And in fact, this week we just crossed over $92 million in forgiveness for the people that we've been able to help, which is absolutely incredible. And then another feature of the one-time account adjustment is that if you spent any time over the years in long-term forbearance, the DOE is going to count months spent in forbearance. So if you had 12 or more consecutive forbearance months or 36 or more months cumulative in forbearance, the DOE is going to be able to count that with this one-time account adjustment. So they're going to credit you with additional months toward the 120 if you meet those eligibility requirements. Also, they're going to give credit towards those months spent in deferment prior to 2013, as long as it wasn't in-school deferment. So these changes are happening now, even though the DOE is saying that they won't happen until the end of the year. That's when hopefully they'll complete the process. But the main thing is that this is allowing people to be eligible now for, or darn close to being eligible now for public service loan forgiveness. Then the other thing too, which most of you may or may not know, is that once you're set up correctly, if you're in public service, or even if you're on, one of the income-driven repayment forgiveness program, the months during the CARES Act, when loans have been put in emergency general forbearance, those months are going to count as if you were making payments. So for most people, right there are 40 right there without any additional months. So this is huge and a once in a lifetime opportunity. If people don't meet this deadline by the end of the year to get set up correctly, they're out of luck. Moving forward, this is it. And I would not recommend holding out until the very last minute, because things are constantly changing and you definitely want to be able to take advantage of this. Now, Sam, I know I just went over a lot of info, but what clarity can you provide people who are confused about the impact of like the Biden debt relief program and this other, one-time account adjustment that we're talking about?
Well, there's been a lot of confusion about that. I think it doesn't help that the Department of Education on FSA, right at the top, they have a big banner saying student loan forgiveness is on hold. They're only referring to the Biden debt relief program. So that's the program that President Biden had announced last August. That's the one that would forgive $10,000 for most borrowers as long as you meet the income requirements, or $20,000 if you meet the income requirements, and you would also receive Pell Grants while you're in school. So that program has been under some court challenges. The Supreme Court actually heard the case at the end of February. They're going to be making a ruling most likely sometime in May or June of this year. That program is going to continue to be on hold until they have a court ruling. But in the meantime, all of the other forgiveness programs are still proceeding as normal, whether that's public service loan forgiveness or IDRF, teacher loan forgiveness, or total and permanent disability. All of those programs are still proceeding as normal.
Now, Sam, so what do you think? I know we're still on the subject, but what do you think somebody should do if they think they're eligible for the Biden? Like, if it were me, I wouldn't hold out for that. I would move forward with one of these other forgiveness programs if they're eligible. And then if the Biden relief happens, great. But this way, at least they're in process of getting their qualifying payments to count, because it is taking the DOE forever to update information. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree. I think there's no reason to waste time. If the Biden relief program goes through, it's still going to be able to be used in conjunction with these other programs. So if you're eligible for public service loan forgiveness, get on track now, don't wait. If the Biden relief comes through, great, that'll knock something off of your balance, but you'll still be able to use PSLF to deal with the rest of it. So We don't know what the courts are going to do. There's been a lot of speculation that they may not look favorably on allowing the Biden relief to proceed. If they do, it'll be a nice surprise. We'll all be able to celebrate. And if not, at least you have a backup plan in place.
Right. I think that's important.
Now, just to circle back, what we had been talking about a little bit with the one-time adjustment, a lot of borrowers who are already working toward loan forgiveness programs are a little bit confused about how this might impact their eligibility. How would that affect, say, if I'm already working toward PSLF, how would the one-time account adjustment affect me?
So if you're already working towards public service loan forgiveness or one of the other forgiveness programs, for most people, it's been a benefit because there are old payments out there that normally would not have counted. So the important thing is that employment certifications have to be filled out by their employers going all the way back to 2007, October 1st, 2007, if they were in repayment. Because let's say that your most recent only is covering you from, 2017 till present, but you had another eligible employer that previously the employment certifications haven't been done for because they weren't needed. Now you're going to want to get those done. If you're in public service, you want to make sure you get those done and submitted, because if there are any old payments out there that were not going to count before, they're going to count now. The same with getting credit for that time in long-term forbearance, that will count towards the 120 needed for public service loan forgiveness as well, but only if the DOE knows the dates that you were working in public service. They have no way of knowing that without getting the employment certifications.
Yeah, that's very important. I actually just spoke with a lady yesterday who had consolidated her loans in 2018, and she'd only done the employment certification, just like you said, for the employer that she was currently with at that time. Now adding in that time before the consolidation, because the one-time adjustment will let her go back before the consolidation to get credit before that. She actually was able to add in another 8 years or so of credit, and that would put her over the 120.
Oh, wow. That's great. Now, a lot of people think that, they're just going to log in somewhere and see the time in repayment. Unfortunately, I wish it were that easy. It's not that easy. The employment certifications have to be done. Then you have to make sure you're set up correctly first before you even do that. And then once those are done and uploaded to the correct servicer, then they'll know the dates that you were working in public service, and then they'll go back in, look at all your loans, even old closed loans that were paid off with a consolidation. They're going to count all the time that you are showing in repayment. Like we said earlier, whether you made a payment or not, they're going to count it. And then it's going to happen in increments. They'll get updates incrementally. And usually it freaks most people out, because what happens is they get that notice saying they're not eligible for public service loan forgiveness because they don't have 120. But just know that the DOE is likely not completed processing those months. And it's going to take months and months for this to happen, you guys. Don't expect that this is going to be like a quickie, a couple months down the road. This is done. We've been telling everybody it can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months for you to see your balance forgiven if you do have that 120 qualifying payments.
Yep. And for people who have not yet reached 120, even with the one-time account adjustment, you may not see the effect of the one-time adjustment until the beginning of next year.
Right.
They have said it might be 2024 before that's updated.
Right. For sure. And I've seen some crazy things happening with these qualifying payments. So things usually work out better than anticipated.
Yes. I agree.
That's good news. And so, Sam, like on the road ahead, what can we expect?
Well, the Department of Education isn't done. I think that the current administration is really trying to set right some of the old wrongs as far as forgiveness programs and student loan borrowers in general. There is a new income-driven repayment plan that's been proposed that has not taken effect yet, but if that does end up taking effect, it will substantially reduce payments for most borrowers. We're talking sometimes, hundreds of dollars a month difference between your old and payment. There's also some changes for public service loan forgiveness that are expected to take effect July 1st. Those have already been announced and confirmed. One of the biggest ones there is if you happen to fall into that category, and we often talk to, for example, substitute teachers that fall into this category, your employer considers you part-time. Under the current rules, no matter how many hours a week you're working, if your employer considers you part-time, you are not eligible for PSLF. Starting July 1st, if you're working more than 30 hours a week for a qualifying employer, that is considered to meet the definition of full-time, regardless of how your employer classifies you. And that is going to be a retroactive change. So you would have to resubmit your certification paperwork, but you would be able to receive credit. Say if you were working in 2015 part-time, you would be able to receive credit as long as it was over 30 hours a week. They're also going to be allowing people who had been steered into forbearance or deferment that did not meet the requirements for the one-time account adjustment to be able to redeem some of those payments as well and receive credit toward the 120 or 240, depending on the program they're working toward. So that's going to be called the hold harmless provision. We don't have a lot of information on that yet, but it does sound like it's going to be an opportunity, especially for people who would have been on $0 payments, to be able to receive credit for prior months that even didn't count with the one-time adjustment.
Oh, that's great. And then the other thing too about part-time employment, if you are working like a cumulative total that equals at least the 30 hours a week with two different employers, that still counts. So you can have two part-time employers that equal the 30 hours and it's still going to count as an eligible employer and the time is eligible.
Yes, and that's true even with the current rules, if you happen to be in that situation.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So Patti, where can people get more updates from the Department of Education or on what the Department of Education is doing?
So if you go to studentaid.gov, you can log in there or set up your account with them and sign up for notifications. They'll keep you posted. Also, your servicer, make sure that they have your correct email address information and just keep an eye out. I know a lot of us are notoriously, just marking them red or deleting them. You may want to start to read them because there may be some important information in there that you don't want to miss. And then, of course, as always, I would always recommend somebody setting up their complimentary consultation with us. We'll actually get a little bit of info. We'll log in, we'll look at their loans, and then we'll go over all the options they have in complete detail, which is really beneficial for most people because people oftentimes think that they're understanding it correctly, but it's not that easy to understand for the average person who's just looking at this. So just definitely, let us take a look and then we'll go from there. It doesn't cost you anything.
That's great advice, Patti. I think that's something I see every day, especially for people who, like, for example, you might have more than one option available to you, like teacher loan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness. Those aren't programs you necessarily want to use together.
Right. So. It's exactly. And then like if the Biden relief does happen and there's a balance left, maybe that person is eligible for teacher loan forgiveness on their balance or even public service loan forgiveness on their balance. So even though we don't know what's going to happen with the Biden relief, we can get a game plan put together and then they're going to be prepared for whatever comes their way.
Yep. Great advice.
So can you think of anything else that we missed, Sam?
No, just really important if you happen to be in a category where you don't know where your loans are or you don't know what's going on with them. If you might be in default, for example, before the CARES Act started, or if you have FFEL loans that you're currently still making payments to your servicer. Those are times where you definitely do not want to delay. You want to get on the right track now. You have options to not need to be making payments, and you have options to be able to get out of default.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, we'll definitely have a lot more info for you, hopefully the next time around. But as always, set your appointment and then we'll go over everything in detail. And we appreciate your time and look forward to the next one.